All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our 2022-23 Fall Sports Parents Meeting. We are going to be getting started. It is 6 o'clock, so let's get through this, and hopefully we make for an informative night for everybody, whether you're a parent or a student athlete. And let's go ahead and get started here. All right, so first and foremost, like I already kind of mentioned, welcome. Thank you so much for your attendance this evening. I know everybody's got busy schedules, whether you're running around with your student athletes, other children, your own personal schedules. We have quite a few people right now, 68 participants signed on. So we thank each and every one of you for your attendance tonight. My name is Mr. Joe Kiss. I am the new assistant athletic director here at Clay High School, and I'm going to be walking you through and kind of leading tonight's meeting. On with me as well is Mr. Mark Beach. He is the athletic director here at Clay High School, and also on tonight is Mrs. Andrea Spolino. She's the athletic director at Fassett Junior High School. So like I mentioned, I'm going to be kind of leading tonight's fall sports parents meeting. Mr. Beach and Mrs. Spolino will jump in and chime in whenever necessary. But also what they're going to be doing is they're going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have any particular questions, any specific questions, you can type those into the chat, and Mr. Beach and Mrs. Spolino will be monitoring that chat, answering any specific questions that you may have, and then also relaying any questions that maybe have come up a couple different times, or maybe something that they deem is important, and we can share that with the entire group. So again, as we're going through this, I know you cannot talk back to us or give us feedback verbally, but you can absolutely give us feedback or ask questions in the chat, and that chat, like I said, will be monitored. So without any further ado, we're going to get into it tonight. And we're going to be starting with our Oregon City Schools District Athletic Philosophy. So as you can see there in the very first bullet, our philosophy here at the Oregon City Schools as it pertains to athletics is to provide a place of all-around growth and development for student athletes in a competitive setting. So that is first and foremost. And as we're talking about a competitive setting, it's important to mention a couple different kind of key factors here. Competition is a really good thing. I think we all can recognize that, and I think we all can appreciate that. And competition really, when you look at it in a sense, competition really does breed success. If you're not competing and somebody's not kind of on your tail, making you work harder, are you really getting that much better? So competition is a great thing. And if you really stop and think about it, think about the real world and how competitive the real world is. Our student athletes are going to be future workers, future leaders. They're going to be out in the real world, and they're going to be competing for jobs. They're going to be competing in the education sector, in the private sector, kind of to get those things that they want. So interscholastic athletics is really preparing them. This competitive setting is really preparing them for the real world setting. And that's really kind of what we're trying to get to with this. And when you have a competitive setting, a lot of times you're also going to deal with a lot of adverse situations. And adversity, ladies and gentlemen, is also a really good thing. I know adversity is tough. And as a former coach, as a current coach, it's tough for me to watch somebody who is struggling. And I know it's tough to watch sometimes your student athletes who are dealing with an adverse situation. And it's difficult, but adversity is a really, really good teaching tool. So what we're going to be asking as we go through this, that competitive setting is going to lead to many adverse situations. And we're going to be asking you to kind of help your student athlete not kind of fail under those adverse situations, but help them through that in a positive manner, help them learn from those adverse settings. Second bullet point there is build on the values of sportsmanship, respect, and dignity instilled by parents and families. We want to obviously build on the values of sportsmanship and respect, and we're going to continue to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation and how it pertains to not just our student athletes, but parents and spectators alike. And the last philosophy that we have is develop the whole student athlete emotionally, mentally, and physically. And a lot of that emotionally, mentally, and physically, a lot of that ties right back to that competitive setting and dealing with adversity and getting over that and learning how to cope with those types of situations. Next, we're going to go into a little bit of our coaches' expectations. We're going to go through three of these. We're going to go through our coaches' expectations, our expectations for our student athletes, and then our expectations for our parents and our spectators. So just a couple of these that we're going to talk about. First and foremost, we want to develop leadership in students and motivate them through positive incentives, recognition, and good judgment. So I know we're talking about these positive things, and sometimes it's difficult to think about. Adversity can be a positive teaching moment. So even though some of us may view adversity as a negative thought, it really is positive. So a lot of these things are going to be continuing to tie all together. We want our coaches to include all team members in activities and maintain an appropriate professional coach-athlete relationship at all times. Obviously, we want them to be friendly with each other. Obviously, we want them to build good relationships and good rapport, but we do maintain that they make sure they're keeping a good, professional, and appropriate relationship at all times. We also want our coaches to emphasize the proper ideals of sportsmanship, ethical conduct, and fair play, right? Respecting the game. And we're going to continue to talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation. We want them to educate by organizing a program of practice sessions, establishing training rules, and a system of play unique to his and her sport. So obviously making sure that they're conducting a well-formatted practice. They're making sure that they're practicing enough in order to see growth in their student athletes. And I know August 1st, we've just been rolling here on campus. A lot of practices going on, and obviously seeing a lot of good work being put in already in this first week by our student athletes and coaches alike. And then maintaining open lines of communication with program stakeholders by utilizing Remind 101 or another district-approved communication tool. I believe that many of your fall coaches are going to be using Remind 101. We do urge all of you parents and athletes alike to sign up for that Remind 101 communication tool. It is a great way for you as parents to stay in tune at what's happening in your student athletes program. That's a great way for coaches to stay in contact with you. As we know, things sometimes can change on the fly, and sometimes we have to be fluid and adjust and adapt with whatever situations kind of are handed our way, especially things like weather. Practice changes, practice times, game changes, all those types of things. We need to be ordered to be fluid, and we need to be able to adjust and adapt to those situations. Remind 101 really is a great tool for your coaches to communicate with you. So if you have not done that already, if your coaches maybe have not handed that Remind 101 out, I know many of them have, maybe you just haven't received it, make sure you ask your student athlete to get with their coach to get that Remind 101 login information so that you can get on there and get those important updates. All right, moving on to our student athlete expectations. So for any of the student athletes on here, we do expect our student athletes to respect the game. When we're talking about respecting the game, we're talking about treating opponents, teammates, coaches, and other game administrators, including officials, with the respect that is due to them as guests and as fellow human beings. I know sometimes the heat of the moment of competition, it gets our brain kind of fired up, and we start thinking about things, and sometimes we say and do things that maybe we don't mean, or maybe wasn't very respectful, or maybe didn't portray us in that positive of light. And that kind of goes into our next expectation for our student athletes, is to maintain a level of self-control. So we're trying to exercise self-control at all time, never to argue or make gestures indicating a lack of respect for officials, opponents, teammates, coaches, and other game administrators. Our student athletes, many of them have gone through a training known as Focus 3. Our staff went through this last year, and we're going to be continuing to roll this type of training out, this type of self-control training out to our student athletes this year. That is on the docket to try to help them make better decisions in adverse situations by doing some of the things that we call R factors that we're going to be continuing to work with them on. So we continue to work with our student athletes on self-control, and that is a definite big expectation that we have for them. Another big expectation is to be coachable. So show up every day with an open mind. And I know this is tough sometimes for people. It's tough to show up with an open mind. It's tough to sometimes be coachable, even if you're not wanting to. It's kind of just, you're not thinking about it. You don't want to be, but it's important to get your mind right before showing up to practice, to try to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And really, like I already mentioned, be coachable. But in order to be coachable, you have to have an open mind. And it's difficult for us as human beings. Sometimes your way isn't always the best way. And I know it, like I said, it's tough, even for myself and some of my peers. it's tough to realize that sometimes the best way isn't my way. And sometimes it's good to listen and kind of keep my mind open so that I can become a better version of myself on and off the playing surface. So being coachable definitely is a big expectation. Next one there is being team first. Being team first is important. And I've seen this many, many different times with different student athletes. Being team first really means, and sometimes for students, it's tough for them if they're one of the best players on the football field in the fall. And then they go into the winter season on the basketball floor and they're not the best player. They have to be team first. And sometimes that's very difficult. Allow yourself to embrace a team first mentality. Be unselfish and do what the team needs in order to be successful. A lot of times it's not about you yourself. And that's one of the big things that interscholastic athletics teaches our young people is how to kind of think outside of their own mind, how to work for a common cause and not just the one that they're trying to accomplish. The last one there is giving maximum effort. Do not leave anything on the field. This is one of the toughest things that we see. A lot of times student athletes, because they're not coming in with an open mind, they're coming in frustrated each and every day. They're not coming in with that team first mentality, and therefore they're not giving that maximum effort. If they're going into a practice and they're not giving maximum effort, they're not getting better. I mean, they might be getting better, but they're not reaching their maximum potential. They have to come into each and every day giving that maximum effort. And the team really deserves nothing less than that. And they deserve to give themselves and their team nothing less than that. So the team deserves nothing less. And please make sure that your student athletes are coming in giving maximum effort each and every single day. Next one we're going to be going into is our parent and spectator expectations. I know I'm kind of going through these quite quickly, but I know some of these are just more in review. So it's always good to just mention some of these items. But our parent and spectator expectations, first and foremost, is you yourself need to show sportsmanship as well. So, it's one thing to ask our student athletes to show sportsmanship and expect that from them, but we need all of our stakeholders to do the same thing. It's important to know and demonstrate the fundamentals of sportsmanship. Your student athlete looks up to you. And we know it's no secret. You are your student athletes as a parent. You are your student athlete's number one supporter. And that's a great thing. They need you in their corner. But it's also important to know that they look up to you. They look up to their coaches. And with that being said, we need you to kind of demonstrate that way of good sportsmanship, just like we expect our coaches to do as well. So we're trying to get all of our stakeholders on the same page as it pertains to good sportsmanship. Number two is respecting the game. All right, respect, cooperate, and respond enthusiastically to the cheerleaders, coaches, and athletes of all teams. Please be mindful of what the true nature of interscholastic athletics is. We're trying to prepare our student athletes to be better versions of themselves each and every day. We're trying to prepare our student athletes to be good citizens and to be contributing members in a 21st century society. And with that being said, that is the true nature of interscholastic athletics. There's way more out there than just winning and losing. So please make sure you're being mindful and you yourself are respecting the game. Be positive. Being positive sometimes tough. I get it. Situations arise. You may be frustrated with the coaching style. You may be frustrated with other team members. You may be frustrated with the outcome of a game or an event. But it's important to be positive. All right. Be positive towards players and coaches, regardless of the outcome of the contest. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it's not all about winning and losing. Right? Interscholastic athletics is so much more than that, and it offers so much more to that to our student athletes. So we're hoping that you are able to help us in kind of reaching that goal. Next one here is respecting officials and other game administrators. And ladies and gentlemen, this one is big, right? I did not realize this, and I'm sure many of you do not realize this, but it is the reality. The officials shortage is real. And I know you've heard it. It sounds cliche. We've seen things on the news. We've seen things on Twitter. But I'm telling you, the official shortage is a real thing. We've already ran into many different situations in the athletic department this year where we've had to move some games, specifically soccer games, because there are just not enough officials to reach the demand of the games that we're trying to host or trying to compete in. So please be mindful of that. Officials play a key role in the success of interscholastic athletics. Without officials, your student athletes are not able to participate in the things in which they love. They love interscholastic athletics. They love the sport. They love the trade that they're in. But please be mindful that without officials, they cannot do that. Okay.
Joey, can I hop in?
It is real. It is a real thing.
Joey,
last thing is please respect the 24-hour rule. Like we already mentioned, showing good sportsmanship, being positive. There are going to be situations that frustrate you. I can guarantee that. I can guarantee that on a daily basis. When you go through your day, there are adverse situations that frustrate you, that upset you. Okay, so please be mindful, all right, that the 24-hour rule is there and in place to help you, our coaches, and our student athletes. The 24-hour rule allows you to take time. And in our culture playbook that we talk about with our students, number one R factor is to press pause. Pressing pause is critically important. Get your mind right before you have that conversation. Sometimes all you need to do is sleep on it, okay? Sleep on it. If it's still bothering you the next day, right after the game, obviously tensions are high, emotions are high, all right? You want to say things, you want to do things, and a lot of times, ladies and gentlemen, you will regret those things. So please make sure if you have a frustration, you have something wrong, you have an issue, please make sure you are respecting that 24-hour rule. And if it's still bothering you after a good night's sleep the next day, then you can reach out following the chain of command that we're going to be talking about in just a moment. Reach out to that coach, schedule a meeting with your student athlete, and try to get it solved. But please do that 24 hours after the event is over, okay? So here are a list of some inappropriate behaviors. These inappropriate behaviors are directly from our athletic handbook. I'm not going to read these inappropriate behaviors to you on this presentation. I just wanted to throw them up there so that you can look at some things that we deem as inappropriate behaviors from our participants and from our spectators. Again, these lists are in the athletic handbook, and we, as always, urge you to look at that handbook. I know it is a document that you're supposed to look at and sign off saying that you've done that, but please make sure you're actually taking time to look at that, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But again, these are some inappropriate behaviors that really have no place in an interscholastic athletic contest. Next one we're going to talk about is ejection from an athletic contest. I know this can be sometimes a touchy subject, but what I would like to share with all of you is I think by this point it is no secret that we are transitioning from the Three Rivers Athletic Conference to the Northern Lakes League. With that being said, there's a couple things that the NLL does a little bit differently that the track does not. So what I'd like to share with you as we're transitioning from the track to the NLL is the Northern Lakes League has its own spectator code of conduct. All right, so the league itself is going to have a code of conduct for spectators at all Northern Lakes League's events. So trying to get ahead of this curve as we're transitioning from league to league, we are almost in a sense mimicking the league, the NLL's code of conduct. So what we want to make sure that you're understanding of is this season, we are going to be a little bit more stringent, not a little bit, probably a lot more stringent on making sure that there is minimal disruptive behavior within our athletic contests, both here at Clay High School and at Facet Junior High School. The goal for you as a spectator is not to come to an athletic event and try to be disruptive, yelling at officials, yelling at game administrators, other parents, opposing parents, etc. If you are ejected from an athletic contest, and like I've already mentioned, we are going to be watching this a little bit more closely, a lot more closely than in years past. We don't want this to be a shock to you. We do not want this to be a surprise to you. This is in the handbook. We're going to just go through a couple items real quick so that we're being as transparent as possible here. So if you are ejected from an athletic contest, and this is taken right from the NLL's code of conduct, a first offense is a minimum of a 2-game suspension. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you are ejected by a game administrator by an official or anybody else administering that event, there is a minimum of a 2-game suspension. The offender cannot attend at least 2 games of the sport ejected from in all other sporting events, regardless of the level during that time period. So 2 events of the sport, 2 games of the sport you are ejected from. So for example, if you are ejected from a football game, you cannot attend the next 2 football games, whether those are home or away. You cannot attend any events in between that 2-game period. So you cannot attend any volleyball games, any soccer games, anything like that. So that is on your first offense. The second offense is a denial period, all right, for the remaining athletic contests for that season. So hopefully this does not happen. Hopefully you are not ejected from a contest. But again, on that first offense, going back to it, I did not mention this. There will be a plan of action from our athletic department and our school administration to hopefully help kind of curb that behavior. So if it happens again, we are going to try to have some intervention to help that and try to curb that. If it happens again, you will see that denial period for the rest of the athletic season. And your third offense will be a removal from all home Oregon City Schools district athletic contests for 1 calendar year. So just wanted to be transparent with that. Again, we are going to be a little bit more strict on that. Mark and Andrea, I believe my computer may have been on mute. Just the volume, not me myself, but maybe the volume was on mute. So if you were trying to speak, I apologize. Was there anything in the chat at the moment as we're going forward now that I have my sound on?
I think, Joey, right now I'm good. I think you're covering all the bases just as we need. One thing I did want to, I guess, maybe add is on the ejections. Those, when we move to the NLL, those will be honored at all games, both home and away, and they have a much more stringent spectator code of conduct than what we have been used to. So obviously this transition period is critical for us as we move forward.
Right, thanks, Mark. Andrea, anything from the chat?
Nope, we're all set, thank you.
All right, excellent. All right, so moving forward, we talked about the chain of command earlier in the presentation. And this is the chain of command that we are going to be going with. So the first phase of the chain of command is if you are having a problem, obviously, I guess phase 1A would be sitting out that 24-hour rule, sleeping on it, waiting, making sure you're pressing pause, thinking about what you're going to say. Think about, is this important to me? If it's important enough to me today, if I'm asleep on it and it's still important to me tomorrow, it's probably a critical conversation that I might need to have. So I guess phase 1B then would be communicate with the head coach and set up a meeting. So please go to your head coach first. Communicate your frustration with your head coach and set up a meeting with them. All right. And preferably you're going to have your head coach, yourself as the parent or parents, and your student athlete in that first meeting to try to get the issue solved. But please be mindful that playing time and coach's strategy are non-discussion items. Okay, these will not be things that are being discussed. Okay, so if you have a true issue that is not playing time driven, is not strategy driven, please make sure you're doing that. But playing time and coach's strategy are non-discussion items. They will not be discussed. Phase 2 at that point, if you've had that meeting with your student athlete, you've had that meeting with your coach, and you're still not where you think you need to be at, please contact the appropriate athletic department, either Mrs. Spallino over at Bassett Junior High School or Mr. Beach or I here at Clay High School to set up a meeting with the athletic director or athletic directors. In that meeting, Mr. Beach and I are going to say we need the parents, the athlete, the head coach, and the athletic directors are going to be present in that meeting. Okay, so that is the chain of command that we are going with here this year. Next one is our little tidbit on final forms. A couple big points of final forms here. I know final forms, from my perspective as a whole, we've done a lot better job this year with final forms. All of us as stakeholders, you as parents and guardians have done a really excellent job this year, staying ahead of the curve, getting those physicals uploaded. I think that makes it a lot easier for you being able to just snap a picture of your student athlete's physical, upload that baby right onto final forms, and our office can click on that and review it. We've done a really great job of that. You have all done a fantastic job, so thank you for that. If you haven't done so already, emergency medical forms are critical. This is probably one of the most critical pieces of this. Without an emergency medical form, your student in physical, your student cannot participate. This is just a big mandate, a big policy from higher up. So please make sure you're getting your emergency medical forms updated, signed, and reviewed on final forms. Second piece is the sudden cardiac arrest piece. If you didn't know this, sudden cardiac arrest is a state law. You have to watch that video. You have to sign off on that. That is not OHSAA. That is not the Oregon City Schools District. That is a state law that mandates all parents and athletes watch that sudden cardiac arrest video so that they are aware and know what to do if something like that were to happen. So if you've not done that already, please make sure you're getting back on the final forms. Even if you just click the box or signed in and you've not watched it, please make sure you sit down and watch that with your student athletes. It really, really could be life-saving. It's amazing to people. This is the #1 killer in interscholastic athletics. Concussion, make sure you're getting on there, getting your concussion sheets done, all that kind of good stuff. Athletic handbook. Mr. Beach and I were joking earlier, if we were in person and we asked how many people actually read the athletic handbook and we asked you to raise your hands, probably about 5 of the 91 of you on here would actually raise your hand. And I get it. I do it all the time. Terms and agreements, right? Scroll, 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 click the box. Yes, I've read it, even though I've not read a single word. In this case with the athletic handbook, we're urging you to please get on there. If you've not read it, go through that with your student athletes. It outlines everything. It outlines consequences. It outlines appropriate behaviors, expectations, anything you can think about is in the athletic handbook. So please take the time to review that if you've not done so already with yourselves and obviously your student athletes as well. All right, so a couple kind of big pieces from the athletic handbook. These are ones that tend to surprise people. This is from our high school athletic handbook. Mrs. Spallino, I'll ask you if there's anything that is different, like the transportation piece, anything that's different, please make note of that. But for us here at the high school, transportation is kind of a big change, and it's kind of a big different expectation when moving forward. But when transportation is provided, student athletes are required to ride the bus to and from events. This is not a coach's deal. Okay, I know a lot of people tend to get upset with the coach that this is their policy. It's not their policy. This is our district policy. So when transportation is provided, student athletes are required to ride that bus to and from events. Obviously, there are exceptions. A parent may transport his or her own student athlete home from an event with the coach's permission by notifying in writing. If there's something big and it makes sense, if we're competing down in Lima on a Saturday and you have your grandparents who live down there, it makes sense. Okay, so there are some exceptions, but please try to limit those exceptions. And this other one is student athletes may not leave a contest with anyone other than their parents. So you cannot send them home with a friend, with a friend's parents. It must be their own parents. So please make sure you're being mindful of that. Mrs. Spallino, any differences between the Facet and the high school with this?
No.
Thank you. All right, the absence policy. A student athlete must be in attendance at school or a school-related assignment, which could be field trips, for a minimum of half the school day in order to participate in a practice or contest that same day. Coaches will be receiving attendance reports from our attendance office that are letting them know which of their athletes have not been in school a half of the day. At that point, the coach will not be able to allow them to participate in that day's practice and game. Questions that we've often got for Saturday games: Friday is the school day. If they are not here more than a half day on Friday, they are not allowed to participate in the game on a Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. So please be mindful of that. They must be in attendance in the day for half of the day. It is, student comes first. So they need to make sure they're doing their things. They need to get done in the classroom. Obviously, yep, go ahead, Mark.
Apologize. I just want to, for sake of clarity, everybody's school day at the high school can vary, wherein what we are looking at, there may be a student who has one class at the high school on campus and maybe has 2 college courses, so in effect would have 3 classes. We look at the way we determine or measure the course of somebody's day is by the number of classes they have on campus. So in that example that I just posed, a student who has 2 classes at the university and 1 here at school, if they miss the 1 here at school and go to the 2 on campus, they would not be eligible to play or practice in that particular day. So it is based off the number of classes that they have on campus that determines their school day. And then, of course, the 50% of that would be based off of that.
Thank you, Mr. Beach, for the clarification. Appreciate it greatly. And then the last is the standards of conduct and consequences for unacceptable behavior. Like I said a little bit earlier, all of this is laid out in the athletic handbook. We as an athletic department, as a district, try to be as transparent as possible with the things that pertain to your student athletes and your students in general. So please make sure, again, I know I'm plugging this greatly. If you've not read the athletic handbook, please do that. It's all in there, laid out in black and white for you. Next, I'd like to talk about, again, eligibility is in there, but I want to make mention of it. Eligibility, OHSAA at the high school, you must be passing 5 credits in the preceding quarter. All right, so for the fall, we looked directly at 4th quarter of last year for those students who are currently in grades 10 through 12. We looked at the preceding 4th quarter. They must be passing 5 credits. Along with that, they must be earning a 1.5 GPA for the preceding quarter as well. It's not a cumulative. All right, so I know that unfortunately got a couple of student athletes this fall, but we need to make sure we understand the eligibility standards so that we can strive, obviously, for a little bit more success. At the junior high level, you must be passing 4 classes in the preceding quarter. So for incoming 9th graders, we looked at their preceding 4th quarter while they were at Facet. If they were passing 4 of those classes, they were good to go. And the 1.5 GPA is still good down there. Okay, at the district level, academic checkpoints will be done every 2 weeks. So we will be checking every 2 weeks, checking a student's grades. If they are not, if they're not kind of reaching this level, they will be put on what we call academic watch for the preceding next week. During that academic watch period, they will be able to participate in all practices. They will be able to participate in all games and other athletic contests. At that point, at the end of that week, when we go back and check, if they are ineligible after that week, when I mean ineligible, if they're not passing 5 credits here in the high school or 4 credits in the junior high, they will be deemed as ineligible until those grades do become up. So they do get 1 week of academic watch to bring those grades up to standard. If grades are still below the eligibility requirements, the student athlete will be deemed ineligible. Something a little bit different, if your student athlete is deemed ineligible, they are still able to practice but not compete in any games or contests. But something we've done before, they were ineligible for the preceding 2 weeks. The moment they have those grades up and they are able to show our department proof with that, they're able to come down to Mr. Beach or I, send us an email for us to check their grades, etc. And we log into PowerSchool. We see that they are passing the eligibility requirements that I've went over here. We will deem them eligible at that point. So there is not a huge waiting period. All right. So please just make sure you know that they will get 1 week, and we will be notifying parents. Hello, your student athlete is on academic watch. These are their grades. They have 1 week to get those up, and hopefully, they're busting their butt to get those grades up so that we do not have to put them in the ineligible column. Okay. Participation fees. We always get some questions on that. A little bit different between the high school here at Clay and the junior high over at Facet. Here at the high school, first sport is $150. So everybody for the fall is being assessed at $150. If they participate in a winter sport, it will be $100, and their third sport is $50. At the junior high, it is $50 across the board. And Mr. Beach, I know there's a family cap. Can you please enlighten me a little bit on the family cap? I seem to have forgotten what that number is.
$500.
$500 is the family cap. So anything over that, you will not be charged for participation. A couple notes at the bottom here. Prior year balances must be paid in full before participation this fall. If you are a person who received an email from myself over the summertime that kind of stated, hey, you have a remaining balance, either school funds, athletic fees, really anything that was left in that account. I sent you an email over the summer. Those must be paid in full before we can fully clear your athlete to participate this fall. And just to make mention, we've gotten a lot of emails and a lot of calls about this. Some fees have not yet been assessed to the 2022-23 fall season. The reason behind that is some of the teams we're going through cuts. We wanted to make sure we got those actual full finalized rosters before we assessed any fees. So some sports, such as football, boys and girls soccer, fees have been assessed. Other sports have not been assessed yet. So we will be assessing those here within probably early next week. Tickets, we are continuing the all digital ticket status for the 2022-23 school year. So no tickets will be sold at the gate. $8 varsity price, no discounts, $6 sub varsity, no discounts. Online purchase only. You can purchase those tickets from our athletic website. The athletic website is listed there. Hopefully at this point, we are all becoming a little bit more accustomed to the digital world and purchasing those tickets online. I know the first season we had some challenges, but hopefully I think things are pretty smoothed out and we're kind of used to this function at this point. We do have passes available. We have annual passes. Individual and family passes are available on the athletic website. If you're interested in these passes, OCS student and student athlete passes are also available. You must have a passcode obtained at tickets@oregoncs.org. So if you are a student athlete and you are interested in receiving a discounted ticket or pass, please go ahead and email tickets@oregoncs.org and we can get you the passcode to get that discounted pass. Okay, Mr. Beach, anything else on tickets?
No, not at this time there.
Mrs. Spallino, what are your ticket prices for the fall?
Our ticket prices are $4 with students or children under 5 being free.
All right, thank you so much. We don't have much left to go, I promise. Streaming home games. We have the NFHS streaming service installed inside of Clay Memorial Stadium and Harold Potter Fieldhouse. So any events that take place inside of Clay Memorial Stadium or Potter Fieldhouse are streamed on the NFHS network. Those are streamed live. They are subscription based. So it's $11.99 monthly or $79.99 annually. So again, anything that happens, any other athletic event that happens within those two facilities are streamed live on the NFHS network. So great thing for grandparents who may not be able to come to the games, maybe live out of state, family members that live out of state, all of these things, really a great resource for them to use. If you're interested in that, to sign up, you go to the nfhsnetwork.com and search for Clay High School. All right, fall sports pictures. Picture day is Saturday, August 13th. Team and individual pictures. We are in the process of distributing picture forms to all of our fall coaches. Senior banners are $25. Those are going to be taken on that same day. If you're interested in a senior banner, please make checks payable to Imagine That Photo, and the payment is due at the time of the photo. Mr. Beach, anything to add on pictures? I believe everybody, maybe except for one group, is taking pictures on the 13th. Is that correct?
That is accurate. 13th for everyone except for one team.
All right, thank you so much. The last bit we have is our closing. If you have any questions, please feel free at this point to put them in the chat. I know you've probably been doing that throughout the presentation. While we're putting any last final questions in the chat, I do want to give a plug out to our Clay High School Athletic Boosters. We are always looking for people to join the Boosters. The Boosters is a fantastic organization that really does a lot for all of our student athletes here at Clay High School. If you are interested in joining the CHS Athletic Boosters, please, please, please please email the president. This is Jackie Blue at jblue@oregoncs.org. She's one of the nicest people in the entire world. Please think about joining. Please think about making a difference for our student athletes by participating in our Clay High School Athletic Boosters. If you have any questions that we did not answer tonight on the call, Mr. Beach, our athletic director at Clay High School, his email is listed. Mr. Kiss, myself, as assistant athletic director, there's my email. Mrs. Spallino, athletic director over at Facet Junior High, there's her contact information as well. We are always more than happy to help you answer any questions that you have. I know things pop up, questions come, shoot those over to us. We'll get back to you in a timely fashion and try to answer any questions that you may have. So any questions from the chat?
Yes, Joey, there's a few out here I'd like to address verbally as opposed to sending typing up an answer here.
Okay.
We have a question regarding tickets. In years past, student athletes were given a punch card that was good for any home game across the district. And the question here is there a reason why this was discontinued? Actually, what happened now is we no longer do the punch cards, but student athletes will get a code and are able to purchase, or not purchase, but to get a passcode and purchase, not purchase, but obtain tickets for themselves for games. So this is done on a seasonal, an entire year basis, I believe is what we do it now. So it's not a punch card situation. It is directly related to a pass for the year. So that should answer that question. The next question was details on passes, again for Clay. Do you have to email to purchase them? Is there an athlete's pass still? There's still an athlete's pass that is relevant to the previous answer. There's still an athlete's pass. The student athlete will need to come to either the cashier or email the athletic department for their code. Effectively, they must prove that they're a student athlete here. And so that'll run through the athletic department. Obviously, if they have a student email, that's an easy validation. We will then check to make sure they do in fact play a sport. And if so, then we'll issue a passcode so that they can acquire that pass online digitally. So anyone else who is looking to purchase a ticket, whether you're a parent or a student who is not an athlete, you would do that on our website. There is a link. If you click on tickets for the high school games, if you click on tickets, it will take you directly to our digital box office, and you'll be able to purchase your tickets in that manner. If you are looking for tickets for junior high contest, unfortunately, you have to go to our website, our athletic website, and click on the More tab. This is and when you go on the More tab, then you can find tickets that way, tickets and passes that way. That is not necessarily the way we would prefer that, but that is a limitation based off of our vendor and they differentiate Facet events from the high schools. So two separate ways to get there, but all of that you can get by starting on the athletic website. Also, I would suggest strongly that you get the mobile hometown ticketing app because then you can, in downloading that, you can also purchase your tickets at other schools for away games events, such as any school within the NLL. That entire conference uses hometown ticketing, the same vendor. Most schools in the state do use hometown ticketing as their vendor. There are a few exceptions to that rule, but again, the best way I would tell you to procure your tickets is to download that app because you can get both home and away. I just want to clarify one step further on the away games. You would search, let's say we were playing at Sylvania Northview, you would pull up the same search on Sylvania Northview for their game schedule, and then select the appropriate game. So that's how you would do that. And
Mr. Beach, I'll chime in real quick on that.
Mhm.
If anybody has any questions on that, or that they were unable to understand that really fully, on our athletics Twitter at Clay Athletics on Twitter, we have a step-by-step pinned right at the top of our profile with a step-by-step with images, with screenshots, and all that kind of good stuff on Twitter for you. You can follow that step-by-step as well if you're more of an image-based person like I am.
Great. Thanks, Joe, for filling in that gap there. Also, another question, will there be a retake date for fall pictures? No, there will not. As we said, our vendor is locked into a very tight schedule. We have no wiggle room whatsoever. And with regard to that, we are pressed against the wall in terms of meeting any deadlines for our programs. And with the advent or the expansion of football playoff schedules, they've cut a week of practice time out. So getting to press, we have less time than we've ever had to get ready for the competition schedule. So unfortunately, there will not be a retake date for fall pictures. Next question was, do we have, do second sports count like fall, spring? Meaning if we play a sport in the fall, that's 150, and then the spring is 100. That is correct. It is the first sport. If a child plays 2 sports in a season, that's very rare for that to occur, but somebody may run cross country, let's say, and play soccer. We would charge the 150 for the season. But for each season in which they play, the first season that they would play would be 150. The second season would be 100, whether that was the second season was the winter or the spring. And if they played fall season, it would be 150. If they then continued to play winter, it'd be 100. And then if they continued on to play spring, it would be 50. And for Facet, it is just a straight $50 per season fee. And back to pictures, we do have a schedule for pictures. I can, if you are on final forms, if you're Mr. Kisser, I can send that out via final forms in terms of the picture schedule for Saturday, and take care of that. One last question for the ticket app is hometown ticketing, all one word, hometown, all one word, hometown ticketing, and that is the name of the app. And Joey, I think that's all I have and can see in the question and answer
Perfect.
chat room.
Yeah, I believe the name of the app is Hometown, all one word, space fan. All right, there's nothing else. Mrs. Spallino, any last comments from Facet standpoint?
No, we did have some questions about our pictures. I have answered that in the chat, but just so everyone is aware in case they're not monitoring that, our information will go out next week along with picture forms, but cross country and cheer will be on August 23rd at 3 p.m. at Pearson Park. There will be a shuttle that is provided. Parents will just need to pick up their players at the end of that practice. On August 25th, football and volleyball will be at Facet, and that will start at 3 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Kiss.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your attendance at tonight's meeting. Hopefully you got some questions answered, and hopefully it's going to be, in an effort to make for an easy start to the fall season for both yourself and your student athletes, along with your families. So looking forward to a great fall season. Again, thank you for your attendance. And as always, go Eagles.